guys, my name is Kirsty and welcome to another video. So you can probably tell that this is a very different setting than usual, and that is because I'm actually in my sister's bedroom. My bedroom is being occupied by my Dutch family. There isn't any room for me to film in there, so I am filming in here instead. So it might be a little bit echoey, the lighting might not be great, but we've just got to make do with what we've got, I'm afraid. So today I am going to talk to you guys about my March wrap up. So in March I read a total of 9 books, which is pretty good going, to be fair. That seems to be kind of like my average number, about 9 or 10. Generally felt like I read less than 9 in March because I had 2 weeks where I was in this really bad kind of depression phase and I just couldn't bring myself to read or edit or film or do anything at all. I am happy with 9 books. So I don't have all of these books on hand because, like I said, my room is a bit occupied at the moment, so I don't have access to all of my bookshelves. So the books that I have with me here are just the ones that I have on hand. The first book that I read in March was The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Lesley Walton, and I'm going to give this a 3 or a 3.5 out of 5. I enjoyed the story. It's very different to what I normally read. It's a historical fiction book, but you follow 3 generations of women in the same family, so a grandmother, a mother and the daughter, and how they experience romance and family, friendships, and it is quite a different way of telling the story, and I think Lesley Walton does a very good job of like lyrical writing, but I think the overall story wasn't for me. I do have an arc of Lesley Walton's new book, The Price Guide to the Occult, and I do plan on reading it, but I don't know. That's why I've kind of given it a 3 out of 5 because I love the concept and the writing was really lyrical and beautiful to read, but the overall kind of execution of the story wasn't one that grasped me, so that's why I've given it a 3 out of 5. The second book that I read in March was Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas, and this is the second book in the Throne of Glass series. I was going to binge read this series, so I was going to read Heir of Fire next and then just binge read everything because I absolutely loved the first book, Throne of Glass, and Crown of Midnight I am going to give a solid 5 out of 5 stars. I think it's even better than the first book because so much more happens in Crown of Midnight. There's more character development and there's more twists and turns. It made me emotional in the happy and the sad sense, and I did mention this in my review, which is on my website. I did mention that the only downfall of Crown of Midnight was that there was less bookish appreciation from Selena, which made me sad because in book 1 she was like, oh my god, I love books so much, and there was less of that in this book, but there was definitely more of a stronger plot in Crown of Midnight, and that ending, oh my life, it was just crazy, which was why I wanted to binge read the series, but I had to start reading university books, so I couldn't binge read the series. But this is just a solid 5 out of 5 stars, and I can't wait to carry on with the rest of the books. The next 3 books that I read in March were actually graphic novels. So I read Paper Girls Volume 1, Volume 2 and Volume 3. I don't know how I feel about this series. It's got a good concept, so it's set in the 80s and it's about these young teenagers who deliver newspapers on their paper rounds, and they get sucked into this whole different world of time travel and kind of alien devices. So it's a good concept, but I think the way that Brian K. Vaughan has written the story isn't that effective because it just feels like he's pulling ideas out of a hat and then smushing them all together, and it doesn't feel like a very coherent storyline, which I can understand because it's time travel, so it's going to get a little bit, not confusing, but all over the place, if you will. I think the only reason why I'm going to carry on with this series is because I kind of want to find out what happens, and I want to reach a point where it's got a really strong storyline. And because it's Brian K. Vaughan, he wrote the Saga series, and that was absolutely brilliant. It's one of my favourite series of all time. That's one of the reasons why I'm carrying on with Paper Girls, because it's Brian K. Vaughan, and I'm really interested to see what other storylines he comes up with for Paper Girls. I've already pre-ordered volume 4 and volume 5, so we shall see. But all of these volumes I gave a 3 or a 3.5 out of 5, so it's an average graphic novel series. The next book that I read was The Sacrifice Box by Martin Stewart, and I had to read this for my monthly book club at Waterstones. This was a very strange book. I really don't know how to describe it. There are these 5 friends, and they used to be really good friends over the summer. They find this box, they each sacrifice something, and then there's rules for this box, and one of the friends breaks the rules, and then loads of bad things happen in their town. Good premise, okay, it's got a really good concept. The beginning of this book was quite slow, and it took me a while to get into it. There was a talking teddy bear, which kind of reminded me of that episode of Supernatural, if anyone has seen it, where there's this like giant teddy bear walking around. It reminded me of that, and I couldn't help but just find it funny instead of creepy. I just kind of had this image of like a mini Ted running around. That's how my brain works. But further on into the story, it got quite exciting, and there was a lot more adventure, and it was more thrilling, and there was this concept of zombies. So I don't know, a bird would die and then it would come back to life, so it would be like undead, and same with people. So it had zombies in it as well, which is something that you don't actually get from the blurb of the book. You would never think that there were zombies in it, but there were zombies, which was very strange. Overall, it was a good book. Again, like I said, the beginning was very slow, but then it got into more exciting storylines, and the characters were all fun. But I gave this a 3.5 overall. The next book I read was actually one that I needed to read for university, and that was Orlando by Virginia Woolf, and I gave this a 1 out of 5 stars. I'm so sorry for people who are massive fans of Virginia Woolf's writing, but I just can't seem to get into it. I read To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf for my first year of university, and Virginia Woolf writes in this kind of flow of consciousness style, and I just don't think that style of writing is for me, because I find it very boring, I guess. It's very tedious, and it's just not interesting. With Orlando, the concept of the story, again, like the rest of these books in this pile, was brilliant. So it's the concept of gender fluidity. There's this character called Orlando, and he has served the Queen as a duke, and he becomes an archduke, and it's about his romance. And then one day he wakes up and he finds out that she has become a woman, and it's about her then going through society as a woman. This book spans 400 years, so it's kind of like a fantasy element, and that kind of matches the stream of consciousness writing style as well. It's a good concept of gender fluidity, and it was a very kind of strong concept to be writing about in Virginia Woolf's time. Props to her for writing a storyline like that, but I just didn't enjoy it at all. It's just not for me, and I don't think I'll be reading any more Virginia Woolf novels, because I've read 2 and I found both of them really boring. And the next book I read was actually a poetry collection, and that is She Felt Like Feeling Nothing by R.H. Sin. And I actually read this for my Easter readathon, which was hosted by Kate from Reading Through Infinity. This follows the same kind of lines as Milk and Honey, The Sun and Her Flowers. The princess saves herself in this one, like female empowerment and the politics of feminism. And this deals with friendships, love, loss, sacrifice, just strong women in general, and I actually really enjoyed it. I've never heard of this poetry collection before, I've never heard of RH Sim before, so it was really good to kind of delve into unknown waters, I guess, and try out a new poet, and I really did enjoy it. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I could relate to a lot of the poems that RH Sim wrote about, and I was just bookmarking loads. And the last book that I read in March was actually another graphic novel, and this was The Damned Volume 1, 3 Days Dead. And this is written by Cullen Bunn, and the illustrations are done by Brian Hurt, with Bill Crabtree doing the colours. So The Damned is about gangs and mob families, but the mob families are actually demons. So that's where the fantasy element of this graphic novel comes in, and our main protagonist, Eddie, he is someone who has sold his soul to these demons, and to be honest, I'm not quite sure what his role is yet. He kind of helps out with the demons, but then he fights back with some of the demons. So because I've only read the first 2 volumes, I read the second volume in April, so that would be my April wrap up. I'm not quite sure what Eddie's kind of arc is, or what his plans are and his goals are, so it'll be quite interesting to carry on this graphic novel series and find out what's going to happen with these demon mob family gangs kind of things. It's very different to what I normally go for graphic novels. I tend to go for a much more sci-fi or superhero element and not kind of crime bosses, I guess. But I gave The Damned Volume 1 a 3.5 out of 5 stars because, like I said, it's not something that I'm quite used to, and I'm not sure about the characters. I couldn't quite connect with some of them. But those are the 9 books that I read in March. It's been an average reading month, I guess. Most of the books that I've read have been 3.5 stars, apart from Crown of Midnight, which was of course 5 out of 5 stars. So yeah, that is it for my March wrap up. Which books did you guys read in March? I would love to know. So let me know one of the books that you read in March in the comments box below. If you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you've got any comments, questions or feedback, leave it in the description box below. I post videos on Mondays, Tuesdays and Fridays, but this week has sort of been a bit upside down because obviously my Dutch family being over, so I haven't had a chance to film when I want to film and put videos up on those scheduled days, but the normal schedule is Mondays, Tuesdays and Fridays. So yeah, that's everything that I need to say. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!